In this episode of Common SENSimilla, we'll be talking to a proud graduate of the Woburn Elementary School DARE program. Today's guest cut her teeth in sales for years before seeing the benefits of the devil's lettuce firsthand. She then went on to co-found Massachusetts' first licensed cannabis manufacturer, quickly turning it into an award-winning and highly sought-after brand. Angela Brown, CEO of Coast Cannabis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this season.
Honored? You're going to go with honored? You're going to butter me up that much?
I'll lead with that. We'll see if I can end with saying that.
I am also honored to have you here. It is a pleasure. I am, as I said before I started, I'm a big fan of the brand. Even though I'm up in Vermont, I get down to visit our mass dispensary clients all the time. And somehow something from you always ends up in my bag. So I'm psyched to talk to you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Oh, you were number one. That's crazy.
We were. So we're the first independent product manufacturer under adult use in Massachusetts. And I guess since Mass was the first state on the East Coast, we can even say we're the first east of Colorado. It's exciting.
Say
it loud, say it proud.
Yeah. You're proud. Take me to Massachusetts in the mid 90s. I'm curious what an Angela Brown then was. Having gone through a few, having done my research, I've painted a bit of a picture in my brain, but I want you to confirm it all for me. You were a straight A student, were you?
The mid 90s.
You never missed a day of school, did you?
I wasn't
late 90s. Let's go to the late 90s then.
Late 90s. Okay. All right. Late 90s is good. We're getting into we're going into high school, which is good. No, so you want to know what it really was is growing up, I had a lot of exposure to cannabis, but I also had a lot of, the classic education you go through, like you referenced DARE, and you learn these stereotypes that get perpetuated. And that is something that kind of stuck with me. And what it really came from is that, when I was born into, a single mother. I had 3 siblings that were teenagers.
So she gave, by the time you came around, she was done.
She was done. She was definitely, she was, probably not the best, but she was a little bit older. Single mother, we lived in public housing. There was definitely just a lot of hurdles that, we as a family and stuff had to overcome. And I think very early on, I kind of associated learning about cannabis as making you, lazy and not chasing your dreams. And as someone who was, born into a lot of adversity, I witnessed my surroundings. I knew I wanted to grow out of those. I didn't want to grow into them. So I really had this mindset of saying no to cannabis because I didn't want it to lead me on this path of not being motivated.
Let me ask you this, and I'm gonna maybe even lay down on the couch and start taking notes. But I'm curious. So public housing. There's lots of people generally in those communities. So what I'm hearing is that you were aware. Maybe you projected some sort of thing onto living in this. I can remember doing it too as a kid. I wasn't in public housing, but you become self-aware as a kid and you realize, why is my friend's house so much bigger than my house? Or like, why do they have 12 cars or whatever it is? Why do they have 2 cars? Whatever that is, you become self-aware and you start maybe like, that's where the insecure, do you think that's what was happening to you? And you started to maybe 100%. Associate your neighbors? Okay.
Well, and I just think it was one of those things where you just learned about anything, right? Like don't drink, don't do drugs. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go down the path that I want to go down, which was saying no, saying no to weed, no, thank you. And it was offered my way because I had this misconception that it was going to derail me from being this motivated person. And I love to say that because it wasn't until I started consuming cannabis that I went and launched a company. So I literally worked harder.
I can't wait to talk about this part.
Than I've ever in my life. And if anything, by being a consumer, cannabis has made me a more motivated, a more focused person. So I love that I had that mentality and I got to change it myself because I think people who know me from my youth and knew what my public policy may have been against cannabis, seeing that I started consuming it, when, as far as creating this company, so really, you know, going all into it, I think it's made people who were doubters say, hey, I got to try cannabis. You know, it's almost good that I was a doubter and had maybe built that, because I think I've earned people's trust more so, and got them to come around to try cannabis, because there's still far too many people right here in Massachusetts in our backyard that are relying on pharmaceuticals, or just, you know, not living the best quality life that they deserve, because they are still saying no to cannabis like I was too many years ago.
So this is all super interesting. And I think, like, I can't wait to talk about, you said something really interesting there, which was, you know, it wasn't until after I started using cannabis that I gained this motivation, maybe like developed this passion for this thing I had no idea about. And before, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because this is actually a question of mine further down in my notes, where we talk about selling tech solutions versus seafood versus cannabis, and why, like, you know, maybe it's a pretty easy conclusion to jump to as to why that motivation was there. Maybe it was cannabis, but maybe you just found that, like, you found the calling, right? It took you however many years to get there, but like finally you're like, boom, we'll get there. I'm jumping ahead of myself, Angela Brown. Calm down. All right. Talk to me about I want to understand, and this isn't a common thing. I've done lots of interviews with cannabis entrepreneurs who didn't smoke weed until they did, and, you know, radically changed their lives, started companies, doing whatever. All of those stories are different. Some of them are because of medical reasons, or following childbirth, or whatever the reasons are. I'm curious, like, what converted you? You know, you bought into this prohibitionist, let's call it, kind of mentality, or just like, you know, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but like, I don't want this for myself because I think it ruins people, and maybe I think it leads to this life that I've lived, and I'm trying to get away from there. So what was it that, like, changed?
The catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, what it really was is it was that the mindset was always, it's not for me. You do you. I'm always around it. And I guess it plays in. So my husband and I are co-founders in this business, and we met 19 years ago in college. And he was the quintessential definition of a pothead in college. And it's so funny because I didn't consume, but of course, you know, we're always hanging out, and it's just kind of pass it by me, you know, not for me, etc. Yeah. So, and it was that I just felt that I was on this path, and I didn't need anything to pull off my focus or my motivation that I had. So what it was, though, is I had always dealt with medical issues, mainly digestion and sleeping. So when I went, graduated college, getting out there to start climbing that corporate ladder, and again, make all those good decisions so I can, you know, have the successful life I've envisioned since a child, I'm dealing with not sleeping. I'm dealing with my stomach being torn up every day. I'm not able to even put my best foot forward in my jobs. And I was probably about 25, and the only solutions the doctors were giving me a couple years into this, you know, pharmaceutical journey was to just increase. So let's move to a more potent sleeping pill. Let's move to a more potent, you know, digestive regimen, and talking about surgeries, getting things removed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way.
For sleep issues that, you know, they were talking about surgeries.
No. I would say digestion.
Oh, digestion. Okay. I was going to say, that's crazy. You're a frontal lobotomy. We're just going to remove your brain.
Remove it right out. Maybe she'll sleep.
We're just going to take your head off, and you'll sleep just fine, Angela.
Just put in a cup of cold water at night, put it back on the day.
Yeah.
No, and it was really that.
Right next to Ted Williams.
Yes, perfect. What it really became is I became very sad. And I started saying, like, if this is life, like, I don't want this. I'm not even 30. I'm absolutely exhausted. I have no motivation. I can't get up in the morning. You know, I'm sick. I just feel like absolute walking garbage. And all along, Brian, my lovely partner, was consuming. I'd make him smoke outside, of course, though, not in the house. And he said, you should really give this a try. And I kept saying, not for me, not for me. You do you, not for me. And then finally, about 2014.
Real quick. Yeah. Before you finish this, not me, not for me. You do you. you're all the way up until you're 25. There wasn't a time when that joint went by and you were like, you know what? Let me just give it to me for 1 second. Let me just.
I got to be honest. I had consumed cannabis during college, maybe 2 or 3 times over the course of 5 years. I did the 5-year plan in college.
You and me both.
Couldn't really figure out what I wanted.
It's a sign of a good entrepreneur.
Yeah, right. Changed my major a couple of times. So what it was is that every time though I consumed, I was always under the influence of alcohol.
Sure. Got it.
So when I would consume and then the next day feel like crap from the alcohol, of course, I would be like, oh goodness, keep that cannabis, keep that weed away from me. You know,
but give me some hair of the dog.
And that was it. And that was exactly it, because that was also so normalized, especially as a woman. You know, I think back to college days and you kind of saw a lot more of the men smoking weed. You didn't really get invited in and you didn't see a lot of girls partaking, but you did see us having wine night and, you know, going to the bar for martinis and stuff as we all aged or got fake IDs. Yeah. But that was so normalized. So I just kept on that path. And as you can imagine, someone who has underlying digestive problems at this time in college didn't have fully figured out yet of what was going on. Alcohol is not good for it. So I was, again, you know, not that I had a drinking problem, but I'm putting stuff in my body.
Sure, you're a college student. You're in your 20s. Yeah.
A terrible.
I don't remember that entire decade.
Right. Exactly. You know, so what led basically was me hitting my wit's end. Also at the same time, though, that we passed medical here in Massachusetts. So 2014. So the conversation was changing and I started to, you know, wasn't just my lovely partner telling me cannabis is great for sleeping and great for digestion. It was other people I worked next to. It was, you know, people I met in social settings. So I was like, okay, it was women. I was hearing it from women.
The person I lived with and loved and trusted, no. But strangers telling me, that I'll listen to.
That's exactly right. That's how you know. You can't trust the person you live with. But it's funny. I always joke. I went home. It's like probably the only time I've given him the full, you're right, I'm wrong. But I gave it a try and my life changed. So amazing. Within months, 2 months, very short period of time, I stopped taking sleeping pills. I stopped taking digestive pills. I started consuming cannabis daily. And I couldn't believe, so those 2 problems were gone. Wow, great. But then there was this snowball effect in the best way, like a good snowball gaining momentum towards you, was I was seeing myself having more energy. I felt my personality was coming
sleeping. Your body might have been working better. You were digesting the food. You were probably absorbing nutrients a little, you know, more efficiently than you had been.
It was. And then another great thing is I had always been
a doctor, by the way. So
hey,
just
PhD.
So you know. I know what I'm talking about.
A great thing was I was always someone who struggled with my weight. I was always an overweight person. I just thought I'm a big girl. That's my life. And I was confident, but I was a bigger girl. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting because with starting to consume cannabis, I was starting to kind of go down this thing of like, I should start working out, you know, getting towards 30, want to improve my life, but I never had the motivation. I have started the workout programs before, you know, never stayed on them, but I mistakenly one day consumed I consumed concentrates. So very early on consumed concentrate and I was like, oh no, I am supposed to go to a workout class that I have pre-booked and paid for in 1 hour. What am I going to do? And I didn't want to lose my deposit I put on it because, you know, I don't want to overspend money. So I went to the class and it was the best workout I had ever had in my life to that point.
That's awesome.
I was on like personal records. I was enjoying myself. I was so motivated. So that was in 2018. This probably happened. And I have not taken a single workout class without consuming cannabis to this date. I lost a ton of weight. I got awesome. Really fit. It was great. And when people would ask, what are you doing? And I would say, I'm starting to consume cannabis. You know, their mind goes again to where I was, whoa, doesn't that make you lazy? Doesn't that give you the munchies? I'm like, well, let me break it down a little bit. Yes, because it speeds up your metabolism. But if you can channel that and you can put that into something with momentum, like going to a workout class where I'm here to work out. I can't munch. There's no food there. Yep. It was almost like if you could overcome that desire to sit and munch. And that's when I realized cannabis doesn't make you lazy. Cannabis doesn't, it's all in how you want to use it. And Absolutely. If you need to relax and you need to get lost in the couch, then that's what you need. But you can also use it to get you up and going. And that's where I don't think we've tapped into the powers of the cannabis plant enough, because a lot of people understand or know the relaxation, but I don't think a lot of people know the other properties that you can get. And that's why I've been so excited to share my story, because I think it's really, when people who have known me, it's a lot easier to hear someone and be like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. That's eye-opening. And maybe they give it a try.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was being a medical, it was needing it medicinally, finally getting it medicinally, and then just seeing the overall amazing positive impacts. And at that moment, I knew everyone could benefit from having a little bit or a lot of cannabis in their daily regimen.
Okay. So did you immediately knew, or was this kind of a snowball effect where like, nope. Okay, am I sleeping better? Like, why am I sleeping better? I'm losing weight. Why am I losing weight? Like you knew immediately.
It was immediate.
Why? Huh.
It was immediate because nothing else in my life changed, but incorporating bringing cannabis into it. I had the same job. I lived in the same apartment. I had the same partner, same everything. Like my eating didn't change. My eating habits didn't change. It was that cannabis honestly was giving me the motivation to get up and go and do these workouts, and actually motivating me to get up and be more active and be a better person. So yeah, I think my body needed it so much that when I had it, it was very apparent within days of consuming it. And I will say this, I jumped in with 2 feet because I had nothing to lose at that point. I had overcome the thought of it's bad for me, right? That mindset was quickly
Let me
diminished.
ask about that, because that's like a pretty radical realization. And I don't want to position it like you spent 24 years being wrong. But you quickly educated yourself and made a radical switch in your life. Like, did you have any, like, was there any bit of, I'm sure you were totally stoked about sleeping, eating well, like all of these things, like finally getting there. Were you a little bummed that it took you that long?
You just took the words out of my mouth. The next day, like I remember like the first, like I consumed concentrate and then ate like a small homemade edible. And I was like, all right, this is going to help me like instant, relief from the concentrate. And then when the edible kicked in, slept. I woke up that next day and I always envisioned that like Walking on Sunshine song, because that's how I felt. Like I literally woke up, like alarm.
We'll clip that. We'll clip this with that song in it. All right.
Perfect. I remember that day, like alarm went off for work, woke up, feet hit the ground, went into my normal routine, but I wasn't like shimmying like a zombie with the hangover from my sleeping pills. I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and couldn't wait to take on the day. So it was it was walking on sunshine.
And
it was
Angela,
very apparent to me.
Don't it feel good?
It feels great.
We'll be right back after these messages. I'm just kidding. We don't have messages.
That was too perfect.
That's awesome. Cool. So, this huge radical switch, change happened in your life. The domino effect of positivity, your health improved, your outlook on life improved. You were pulled back from the edge.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So you're a professional person at this point in your life, right? You spent, whatever, you're 25 when this happened. So you spent four years, whatever, working a job. Growing up, when you envisioned your drug-free life, what was the vision? Like, where was, 18-year-old Angela Brown gonna be when she was 25?
Well, the good thing is I always had dreams and aspirations to be an entrepreneur. And I had always had this desire to climb the ladder, right? To be the top, to be a boss, to do something epic. Because, around me growing up, I saw a lot of people, and nothing wrong with it, of course, but, employees. My mother was an employee. My siblings were employees. That I just wanted more. And what was really exciting actually is when I met Brian, my partner, very early on in college, even before we started dating, something that he shared too was his desire, to build something, to be something, pretty epic. So through our relationship, we always had these conversations of businesses to start, and move to the tropics and start a fishing business, something crazy, right?
But we never. The one thing. Let me ask this to you, because I asked this to like all my friends and stuff. Did you have an not an Airbnb, but a B&B phase? I feel like every married couple goes through the B&B phase.
Oh, the B&B phase.
Now it's an Airbnb. Now it's an Airbnb phase, but
the B&B phase was real. There was actually a hotel that went up in the cave that we were like looking at.
You know the one. Yeah, I have the same one. I know right now. Actually, it's funny. We just launched a website for a non-cannabis client called Mad Bush Falls, and that was. It's brand new in the Mad River Valley, and that was before they tore it down. That was the spot of the B&B that I would drive by and be like, someday that place will be mine. But no, but it's a client, so it kind of, it kind of
is yours. Yeah, we always had this desire. But what was crazy is that how cannabis became where we ended up, and not in the tropics, where maybe on some days when it's cold up here, I would much rather be. That it happened without us saying it. It was so crazy because that's how I knew this is how we were meant to do this. So what happened was
the universe told you.
The universe. I quickly, obviously, as I shared, I tried cannabis, saved my life. I'm fully bought in. Now I'm going to go and do it the right way, right? We have access to medicinal cannabis. We're going to go the route of getting med cards, caregiver cards, all that stuff in Massachusetts, doing everything by the book. So then I go to the first dispensary and I get an edible. I'm like, this is disgusting. Read the ingredients. Couldn't even pronounce half of them. It's like the back of a soda can. And I was like, wait, and again, I think because I'm older, my mindset, it's not this, take what you can get and smoke it, which is how most people had to come up consuming, right? There weren't options.
Sure. No.
I had options. I had open dispensaries, so I can be picky. And when I went in, I couldn't believe what I was being served. So typical, I guess, in myself was like, let me see if I can do it. So I started educating myself on the process of edibles, right? I have to understand all this stuff, how it works, how do you dose, and et cetera, et cetera. I was able to procure some cannabis oil myself, and Brian and I started making edibles in our kitchen in South Boston. And they were for us and our friends to consume. And we started working a little bit with some caregivers up in Maine in the caregiving program, and had our full-time jobs. But we noticed we were sacrificing a lot of time to make these homemade cookies and peanut butter cups and things we used to make, working our job, coming home, being up until 3-4 in the morning, making these things, going to work, and that's how we knew, because we didn't say, well, let's start a cannabis company. It was like, it just happened because we were so passionate about filling this void in cannabis, and specifically in edibles, where everything that was going into an edible product was crap. It was the crap oil, because the other thing to do was to throw it away. It's the cheapest food ingredients you could get. It was coated in sugar, and the kids will like it.
Yep.
No, because we deserve better. And that's where it came from, this desire to be like, wait a second, we're legalizing and we're getting all this on the idea of cannabis is wellness.
But it's all shit.
And I'm living proof. And then you're going to give me this gummy made with corn syrup, refined sugar, all this stuff, and yellow 40, blue 40, whatever it is. What are we doing here? So that just motivated me to create my own, because these dispensaries couldn't serve me. And we did. And then we were going to move to Maine. We're actually just going to go up there and do caregiving because it was the easier path. 2015, obviously, the rumbling changed here in Massachusetts, saying adult use is going to be decentralized. There's an opportunity, for someone like us. We're small, we're local. We couldn't open up a medical group here. And there was a chance of us to do it. So we said, let's set out. Let's be the first. Let's do it. And we heads down, we quit our jobs in 2017 within 2 weeks of each other, which I don't recommend. That was a little scary timing, but we did that. We got to work on our business plan. We formed the company in late 2017, and we were really we're really it was really exciting because we got to submit our application 4 minutes after the portal opened to submit applications. So we were very diligent, and working. We did everything ourselves. We have lawyers, of course, but we represented ourselves to the towns that we wanted to site in. We set up all of our initial meetings. We negotiated our host community agreement. We've just been very hands-on and making this startup work because we're so passionate about the need for products like Coast in the market.
It's really easy to like breeze through, like, oh, we just, we were 4 minutes early to the portal and these things just happened and we got lawyers, like it's really easy to talk about the entrepreneurial journey as like, yeah, there was a thing and I just did it, but there is always trauma faced, fear faced, like, obstacles, all of these things. So the first thing I want to ask you, and what sounds like the easiest entrepreneurial venture that's ever lived, is like, how the hell did you know to do any of these things? Right? Like you weren't like, despite having aspirations of being an entrepreneur, and I have a similar story. Like I'm a late entrepreneur myself. I never started a company. I didn't know how to do any of these things. I also had a lawyer, but I knew to like find smarter people than me. How did you know what to do first? Like, okay, so you're making these cookies until 4 a.m. When do you and Brian look at each other and say like, is something happening here? Because you were an employee, you had been an employee, like you'd been selling tech solutions. You worked for a seafood wholesaler, like all these things that, paid the bills. It was probably fine. You probably have a couple good memories, but let's face it, like, were you passionate about selling fish?
No. And that's exactly what it was, right? It was the passion that was just being ignited between the two of us with creating kind of this at-home project. And what it really was is when we were spending time up in Maine, because they had the caregiving program up there was pretty open. We were able to talk to people that did not know who we were, right? So they had no allegiance to us. And they were, consuming our products and telling us that, this is, and again, I will say we've always used this mindset of organic, clean ingredients. So that was something we first kind of brought to market, even in our personal products. And you had people telling us like, this is amazing. I would buy this every day if I could. This is so much better than what we've had. And we felt that way and people were validating it. And that's really where we were like, we knew we were on the right path. But we did exactly what you touched upon is we also surrounded ourselves with people to fill the voids that we had. So when it came to, extraction, when it came to actually getting this company up and running, I'm not in the kitchen because while I was great at home and doing my little home baking, I'm not a professional chef. I have never prepared food to that scale. So we hired. We are one of our first hires ever was this amazing woman. She is still with us today. And she did have that background. So we worked on the recipe development together and all of that, but she did have some know-how about, creating this on a larger scale. And that's really what we've done is people we've hired is they know things or they're learning things to run those certain departments, but a lot of it was just rolling up our sleeves and learning the things we didn't know enough to get us to the point where we could start a company, get the license and start a company. And then, of course, hire in someone. We're not running extraction. We have extremely very, very smart, sophisticated chemists, running our lab. It's not something that I'm doing, but I know enough to be dangerous in the lab. I know everything works and I'm very involved in the business. And I do think that that's what sets our company apart from many cannabis companies is one, this company didn't start in a boardroom because we saw a report about how profitable cannabis was or something like that. It started because we were dissatisfied medical patients in the market and felt that if we didn't do it, who is going to do it? Because we were let down. And it was that moment of like, no one can do it right for yourself.
Oh yeah, totally. And this is like such a common thread in all these conversations. And like, there are no better words and they sound like bad words. Well, confidence isn't a bad word, but like arrogance sounds like a bad word. But like you have to be a little bit arrogant to like go in and it's not confidence. It is a little arrogance to go in and be like, this sucks. I can do better. I've never made anything, but I can definitely do, you know what I mean? Like to have that mentality. And then the ambition of being, Angela Brown pre-weed, like that sort of vision and being like, oh, I still can kind of fit into this life I saw myself living, and kind of taking the bull by the horns here. It's a very common thing, right? We have to think that we're better than our competitors or solutions.
But what makes us unique, right?
Yeah, totally.
Be better, but what makes us unique and they're
it's better. But I do mean I did say it, and I think like I say this internally too, and it is better. It is unique. That's true, but like there's a lot more than just being unique. There has to be better. Like the customer experience, like is way more than just the ingredients you're using, right? It's a whole ecosphere of being, right? And you don't always know all these things. So that's what I'm really interested in, is like how, like, as you're figuring these things out, and here's what I want to know, because I love these stories, is like, all right, you're living with Brian. I don't know if you were married at this point or whatever, but like you guys are living together, you're both working, you're both making edibles for your friends or whoever. And you think it's a business, and then eventually it gets validated to you that it could be a business by, people around you using your products. And then you guys decide to quit your jobs. So like, take me to that night, because that's stressful as fuck. So like, it doesn't get heavier than that. I didn't have that luxury. I got fired from my job. So like I was thrown right into the survival mode. Like, oh shit, if I don't get a contract signed, like I can't pay rent this month. That was my thing. Yeah. But it wasn't like Thelma and Louise, where like I held hands and we're like, let's go drive this car off a cliff. Yeah, exactly. So take me to that night. Like, yeah.
Yeah. What it was, this was August 2017. Yeah. So it was like going into Labor Day weekend, whatever that Friday was, that was like my last day of work. And then Brian was 2 weeks later. So yeah, a week after Labor Day or something like that. So what it was at the time, we were really trying to align with the commission, the Cannabis Control Commission, because nothing was formed yet. So it passed in November 2016. And then there was talk of this formation of the Cannabis Control Commission and the application portal and the regulations, and all this is going to come out. So we're gearing up for that to happen, because throughout the summer, they're talking about, the commission is going to be formed and all that. So we were at this tipping point where we felt that we didn't have the time to do it right, write the business plan and really get out there. And we had to learn to fundraise. Like, we've never fundraised before. So we knew there was so much we had to do. And at the time, I will share, the application portal was supposed to open January 2018. So our mindset was, we have a very short period of time. We have a lot of big dogs that we are up against, right? All of these medical groups are here. We're very well capitalized, big groups. More were sitting on licenses that they never opened because we had a terrible medical market. So we knew we were up against a lot of sharks. So we were like, all right, we just got to quit our jobs, and we got to be networking. We got to be at everything we can be at, because we didn't have money. So we always said, we don't have money, we have time. We quit our jobs. We need to be at every meeting. We need to meet everyone we can. So we quit our jobs to write the business plan. They formed the Cannabis Control Commission under the open public meeting clause. And living in Boston, it was very convenient for us to jump on the T, go over to the meeting. So anytime there was a meeting, which they used to meet twice a month, we were there sitting in the audience. Like, we were trying to meet everyone we could. If there was a break and all the lawyers or lobbyists were outside, like, we were in that circle. We were just trying to absorb everything we could, because we didn't have money to hire these people. We didn't have money to pay a lobbyist. We needed to be there. So that was kind of our thought, is like, let's get out and make sure the commission and all of the staffers know who we are, and we're going to learn what we need to learn and we're going to get this license. And, we stayed cautiously optimistic. There were definitely moments of, what the heck are we doing? Money is dwindling. Immediately, they formed the Cannabis Control Commission, and then they said licensing was being delayed 6 months minimum. So I went back to work. We did straws. I drew the short straw. I went back to work for a few months while we kind of kept writing the business plan, going to the meetings, having these fundraising calls. And there were so many calls, we were like laughed off the phone. What, you have no experience. What do you mean? And to people we were pitching to, especially the early VC money, they were used to hearing names like Curaleaf and, Ascend, these bigger names come across their desk, and we'd get, luckily being good at sales, I knew how to navigate LinkedIn and kind of get the initial meeting, and you would share what we wanted to do. We had this mindset of this brand for consumers, clean ingredient, not vertical integration, really honed in on building for the consumer first. And so many investors were, that will never work. You'll never get a license. You'll never make money. And it was so motivating to hear that. So I would always hang on the phone and be like, this person doesn't even smoke weed. Like, they have no idea what they're talking about, because what they're pushing. This
is that arrogance again, right? And again, it's not a bad word. Like, it's
cannabis. I wasn't arrogant until I started consuming.
Yeah. People who have invested in so many companies are like, listen, kid, you don't know what you're doing. Get out of here. And most people, literally almost anybody would be like, oh, I guess, old white-haired Chad knows what he's talking about. Like, let's go back to work, I guess, okay. That's it. But no, hell no.
No, it was, and what I'd say, there's definitely that moment. So there's arrogance. And then I think there's like right in there that pride, because what you just said, like, I'll go back to work. Yes, I had a stellar resume. I was a wonderful, performer for every sales role I've been in. I don't think it would have been hard for me. And I was able to find an interim job when I needed it anyways. But there was this pride where I was like, no, I'm not going back. I left.
This is a step backwards.
Yeah. Like, and I didn't go on like, blazing, guns and blazing, but I had social media posts. I quit my job. We're starting this company. We got people every time we bump into them months later. How's it going? So excited for you guys. And it was like that. Like, we can't fail. There's too many people. And furthermore, when we did fundraise, we ended up fundraising through friends and family. Yep. So there is definitely even more weight on our shoulders, because the only money we've ever taken in has either been our own or friends and family. So we need this to be successful. So I think there's different levels or layers to us that keep the motivation going during these very tough times in the cannabis space.
Talk to me about one of those times where maybe you left one of those meetings, and because this happens to me for sure, where it's like, fuck this. Like,
oh yeah,
maybe
we went to New York. We went to New York City, drove out there, got the hotel, investing all this money to get ourselves out there to pitch. We sitting up, 40th floor, whatever, overlooking Manhattan. We got the jitters going, but we're confident. We're expecting this one person who was like the head of the VC fund. Their name is on the side of the building to come in. I already know
what's going to happen. Their assistant comes in.
Assistant says, I only have a couple of minutes.
The assistant only has a couple of minutes. Oh my God.
Can you can start.
I can feel you in that moment.
Everything I had prepared, everything
shame
we practiced,
and anger, and like, I'm going to throw this assistant out of this 40th floor window.
It was like that. So we're a little frazzled because, again, we kind of prepared for what we thought was going to happen. So we're saying who we are. We're immediately kind of getting met with like the classic pushback that this, assistant has probably been given to vet.
Yeah.
And then it's definitely not going great.
22-year-old
sweating profusely. Yeah. Right. And then I remember the top dog, side of the building, name on the side of the building comes in. He's like, I know you came all the way from Mass. So sorry. I just don't have the time. And then doesn't have my face and leaves. So I was like, why did you even come in here? It was better thinking you were double booked. But that made me, this was a
I hope
group
you send this person snapshots of your P&L every quarter.
So I will. I did get a great moment from them a couple of years ago at a conference where they gave me a shout out on stage, and then was like, "Yeah, I didn't think you'd pull it off," is what they said, and I was like, "I know you did, and that's why I pulled it off."
Yeah.
But it was really that. And I remember that moment because we had the long drive home. You know, we're in New York, and we really thought we were going to celebrate. We're here. We felt so confident in our pitch. And that was tough. That was a drive home. That was, you know, thinking about the hundreds of dollars we just put out to get to New York, to stay there, to prep for this. And you have this person basically telling you who has decided on other people who are in the cannabis space. So in our opinion, they're a good judge of character. They're telling you, no, they don't have the time for you. That was very hard. That was one of the darkest moments when we really said, did we make the right decision? But we very quickly got back to Boston, opened up those laptops, started sending more LinkedIn messages to, you know, VCs and all of this. And I will say that is the toughest thing, the access to capital. I think that is single-handedly what is hurting this industry so much, is the few that are giving the money are deciding who gets it, and they are giving it to not great groups. Like we're constantly seeing these groups raising millions upon millions of dollars. And then in a month or two, there's a terrible article coming out about how egregious they're acting in a market or something else that they've done, or there's mishandling of funds. And it's so disheartening because cannabis is craft. You know, cannabis should be grown by someone, you know, and it hurts that some of the biggest companies that are so disconnected from the actual plant are being touted as market leaders.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I completely agree with you. And the other thing that you said that's interesting is like the inability to understand, like, how the hell does Curaleaf, like, how are they buying, you know what I mean? Like, how are they making any of these moves? Like, they fucking, you know, I get it. I think about these things all the time as I'm like, you know, like you, just like trying to close deals, trying to hire the, you know, the next, the best talent, whatever. And, you know, all I'm reading are articles about companies I know are terrible, you know, and aren't, I guess it's more of a indication of the consumer, like that these companies even exist, you know.
And it will come. It's education.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
you see
100%.
But I think that's the best part of what you're seeing here in Massachusetts. While our market is definitely very saturated, we have a lot of brands and stuff like that. What I love is that you're seeing some of the biggest brands in other states not do too well here, right? Like we saw TruLeaf close. There was an article I just read the other day, which was written from a point of view of this person who is touting TruLeaf because they, you know, their numbers are crazy. They have over 50% of the Florida market, et cetera, et cetera. But it's so funny. Never once did this article mention the amount of money they spent in Massachusetts, like to go. And I think what it is it's showing that when done right to a degree, obviously we have some hurdles we need to overcome at the state level, but a competitive market, the customer is going to win. Because these businesses that are having all this success in these other markets where there is no competition, that's not real. And those numbers will fall. And that's what I do kind of enjoy seeing out of Massachusetts right now is a lot of the small brands. You know, we're locally owned and operated. We're, you know, by no right should we maybe have the success we have to some people, but we're a top 3 edible in the state of Massachusetts. You know, we're a top 3 brand. And we're competing with Kiva. We're competing with Wana. We're competing with ARL, you know, Panacea, who's a multi-state operator. So it's really awesome for us that we know that the customers are becoming more sophisticated. And once they get a chance to try something that is great quality, they're hanging on to it. So I do think the future is very bright for us.
Well, it's funny you say that because, you know, Fernway is one of our clients. We love those guys, and you know,
we love Fernway too.
And the opposite thing is starting to happen now. There's companies like Fernway who are not a multi-state operation who are now able to like, let's go to Jersey, let's go to this state that's opening up. Like, let's take this brand that we forged in Massachusetts, in New England, and like, let's start pushing it out, as opposed to like it coming from the West, out here. So I don't know what your big plans are, and maybe we'll talk about it at the end of this, but like, you're right. It's happening. I think to your point about, or maybe it was my point, one of us said something about, just the consumer bit, which is, my theory is most consumers, rather non-consumers, were in the pre-25-year-old Angela Brown situation, where they have something that's preventing them from making the move. And then when they finally do, they have a similar experience as you, as maybe they go to one of these, just huge stores, the Targets of weed or whatever, and aren't educated and have a similar shopping experience that you did in your early days. And they're going to get educated, but it's about, they got to figure it out. hopefully for our clients, especially our brand, our clients, our brand clients, is that we're helping create that content, create all that messaging, so that people can figure out that there are alternatives out there that are made with real ingredients that are, not garbage.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Is that we have most people who are walking into a dispensary, or many are walking in for the first time with little to no knowledge. And that first bit of information they get is the foundation. So can't build a house on a cracked foundation.
Let's talk about that real quick, because you mentioned earlier in the interview, you're not vertically integrated. So beyond your website, your social media, kind of, whatever assets you give out to your dispensaries, I would imagine, bud tenders, associates, or whatever dispensaries call those employees, are your first line of offense, right? Those are the people actually like
huge.
Okay, yes. So how do you, with attrition rates being so high in dispensaries, because those are generally, hourly employees, people come, people go, they're 9-to-5 jobs. How do you make sure that you stay in front of that? Obviously, I've seen your website. It's great. Maybe someday it'll be even better. I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
Okay. Like that.
I think the educational part of it, how do you stay in front of it?
So right now what we do is a lot of touches in the store. And obviously that is
demo days,
education, popping into chat, even just getting a couple of minutes with one retail staff member. If maybe it's a little bit of a lull in the store, or if there's 3 on and there's only 2 customers, it's really hands-on because of the things you talked about. There's so much knowledge that needs to be transferred. There is a high attrition rate, so there's a lot of turnover going, and we're all startups, right? So we're expecting this retail, who is a startup, to have it all figured out, so that when my brand comes in, that's a startup, it can easily, we can easily educate your staff, but that retail staff is going through their growing pains and trying to educate their team on SOPs and stuff. So you are seeing it's a lot of hands-on.
And all the other products, like, usually 5 or 6, whatever vertical of products, and then all the brands and products that fall into those verticals. Like, it's a lot.
And then the not every brand is touting the same information. And I'm not saying like brand specific, obviously we have our own, but even
the value proposition between each brand could be different.
But also I think the basic knowledge that some brands perpetuate, right? Like, and a cannabis company has to give some base level of cannabis knowledge, because often you're talking to someone that might have nothing. So you might be starting out your conversation of THC and CBD, whereas someone else might be way beyond that. But what I've noticed is, depending on the brands, some brands believe different extraction techniques can do certain things, or you see a lot of people using terms like nanotechnology and what nano does, and then you really figure out what nano does and you say that's not what it does. Yeah,
there's a whole vernacular.
Exactly. And I think a lot of brands are starting to, or not starting, but have always been kind of using marketing in a sense to confuse the customer too. And I always refer back to
how do you mean? Wait, say more with that. What do you mean?
So the classic indica gummy versus sativa gummy. Okay, great. So we got this. So now we know we got to really educate this customer and let them know, well, when you start processing the cannabis plant, you're removing these attributes. And I always try to bring it back to like what makes something sativa or indica. It's all different components. It's almost like a recipe. Like all these ingredients will make a sweet cake, and all of these ingredients, while some of them are shared, are going to make a savory dish. And it's just like explaining something like that. But what I think the issue is you have brands that have come out and said, this is our sativa gummy, this is our indica gummy. But when you look at what is actually in that gummy, it's exactly the same. It's a D9 distillate. That's one high. That's one cannabinoid in one form. No matter if you tell me it's an indica or it's a sativa, it's not. It's a cannabinoid.
Same.
So you have people get very confused because they're like, well, why doesn't your gummy tell me if it's an indica or a sativa? And when we first came out, we're like, because those don't exist in edible world. And so that was a little hard because we came out like that because, again, being medical patients, not only were we dissatisfied with the quality of the products, but also the mismarketing. You can't tell me that this will give me this, the magic beans, right? Eat it here, will give you this, eat this here. No. And then furthermore, you have groups that are saying things like terpenes. Terpenes in an edible will give you a different outcome. Well, if we jump back and we say, well, how are terpenes produced? No, the body would never digest that. The body is going to rid that. The liver is not going to digest a terpene. And furthermore, you would need an ungodly amount of terpenes in the product to even hope the body could absorb the smallest amount. Now, smoking cannabis, way different. Terpenes are very important. And that's where, unfortunately, there's been so many brands that have been out kind of the longest, so they do have a huge market share, that are misinforming customers. And it's our brand that is actually making products with CBN, CBC, THCV, CBG, all of these different cannabinoids to actually formulate an effect-based outcome. Customers are like, what? I just want a sativa gummy. And you're like, oh my goodness. So that is hard, but that's what motivates us every day, because what that customer needs is maybe our raspberry lime THCV gummy, because what they're lacking is energy and focus. But this mindset of a sativa gummy, and then they're just buying something because someone slapped sativa on their, cherry gummy. That's what really bothers me. So that's
when all they're saying is what they're really saying is, I want to be sleepy or I don't want to be sleepy.
Yeah.
Like specifically, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Forget describing the entourage effect and like how all these things play together. It's like, and this is the battle. And this is why I think companies like yours are going to ultimately win. You are, but over the course of time, I mean, and that's because
long game for sure.
Right. You're taking the time to explain it in a way that's manageable, marketable, but also validates trust, all of these things, these trust points that brands should be making with their consumers. These are how brands ultimately win.
That is our mindset. We set out to create a brand from the start that we were never going to be ashamed of, that we were never going to have to pivot from. And you're seeing some of these top brands that have been out, they've changed their ingredients because they were using terrible ingredients, and now they're using just subpar ingredients, or, they're changing their tune because now they care about the consumer. And I hope, the takeaway that customers will get.
Is that spin though?
Is it like the spin that they put on there?
Like marketing spin. I mean, is this just like yeah.
I think
I'm going to ask you, like, beyond like ingredients and, this knack to this desire, this need, right, to inform, like, what else is separating you from competitors? Like, why am I, as a customer who's never had a gummy, coming in and choosing yours? Pretend I don't care about the ingredients. Like, what is going to keep me as a customer for you?
Yeah. So if ingredients aside, aren't that important to you, I think a few things are: a lot of our products, the different cannabinoids we use in them actually give the customer the effect that they're looking for. So I think the consistency with our products is huge.
Which is hard in edibles too.
Huh?
It's very hard to be consistent.
It's very hard.
Edibles.
It's very, very hard in edibles. So I think that's a big thing that customers keep coming. I think our story, I think, when people learn more, right? So right off the bat, everything might look very equal to them on the shelf because they're walking in without anything. And we set out to create a brand from day one. It wasn't in a boardroom. This brand was born from our belief and what we were, living and all of that. So passion, exactly. So I think that really does come through for customers, and that they hold on to that, because when they find out, we're woman-owned, family operated, we're local, they get very excited and they get intrigued and they want to try it. So there's a lot of levers. I think we're able to get people to reach for our products that first time. Woman-owned, locally operated. Love that. Organic ingredients. Awesome. Minor cannabinoids. And then when they try it, though, because we are using good ingredients, we are being true, our marketing is who we are. There's no reason for them to look elsewhere, because it's good, it works, and it gives them exactly what they need. And then I think our customer service, if someone calls the number on our package, it rings to my desk. I take a lot of those phone calls.
Poor soul. What are you doing?
No, luckily we get a lot. You know what? It's so blessed. We get more phone calls from people telling us that they love our products and sharing, like I just had to tell you, then we get complaints. That might change as we grow or reach, but it is amazing. There are moments when I've been in tears, because the story on the other end is so powerful, and that it's my product that is giving them whatever it is that they're sharing with me. And I
love this, by the way. I love this because we, in these interviews, we talk about like seriously, like it boils down to what I hope people take away from these conversations are that I can start a business. That people listen to me talk and they're like, this idiot started a company. Oh, like I can definitely do it. And that those voices that say I'm not good enough, or whether they're in your head or some, white-haired Chad in a boardroom who's sending his assistant to see you, like any of those things that, like, again, a normal person would crumble and fall into a million pieces over. Like you can't have that. And so there's like the dark side, right? The dark emotions that you have to face as you're like coming up and trying to start your company. But as it happens, there's the light too. With the darkness, there's always light. So talk to me more about gratitude, because I hear it and I feel the same way. No, like I leave my office, I don't want to say every day because that's crazy, but a lot of days of the week, I leave the office and I'm not always, but I'm usually the last person to leave, right? The first person to be, whatever. And I'm like, I will lock the door and just close my eyes and be like, I'm saying it to myself, but I'm just like, thank you. Like, I can't believe I get this opportunity. I can't believe I'm working it. I'm doing what I love, like with people who are really cool. And my team's, like there's just a gratitude that it's usually drowned out by those louder, darker voices. It says, quit. But, you got to recognize that lightness. So talk to me a little bit about gratitude.
No, and that's really it. It is the gratitude that keeps me going. And it is something that, it's so funny you said that, because a few weeks ago I was having, it was a dark run, right? It was leading up to the full moon that we just had last week. And it was like everything was going. My emotions were just through the roof every day leaving. And it was this moment I had while I was driving, and I was like talking out loud to myself, which I do often in the car. And I said, what the heck is wrong with you? If childhood you could see where you are today, you are accomplishing everything you wanted to accomplish, right? And I was like, holy crap, people are asking me for my opinion. You ask, I'm on your podcast, right? Like, you want to hear what I have to say. And that to me was like, this is good. Like, and I needed that reset of gratitude, because I am setting out to do what I want to do. I'm having success with it. That is something that's so amazing. A lot of businesses fail year 1, year 2, year 3. We're just in year 3. So we're hoping keep it going. But a big thing is those moments of gratitude. So a big one is when we get inquiry or emails or calls from customers saying, your product saved my life. Same thought I have with cannabis. I'm like, wow, right? Like, I didn't have a person to call and say, like, your product saved my life. It was just like I got introduced to cannabis, started using it. But when someone is choosing to tell me that, or my company that, wow, that feeling is pretty epic. And you can't, that's a high. That's a high you don't get from drugs. Awesome. And then it is the moments of reminding myself that I am exactly where I wanted to be, and to be proud of that, and to not compare myself, because I am young. I'm 37. But I do have peers around me that are doing the same thing I'm doing, and they're in their 20s. They got a head start. They went from college to owning a cannabis company. I went from college to working a lot of crappy jobs and not sure what I wanted to do and all of that. So I do sometimes get
okay.
a little
down. That's part of the point, is like, that's okay. There's no, I would say that maybe there's generally a journey that CEOs see themselves on, but I know more people like us who just like were called and, unreluctantly didn't have a choice in doing what we're doing, than I do people with MBAs.
Yeah. No, it's real. And I'm very excited. And every year that goes on, it is a little scary though, because there are moments I have where I remove myself essentially kind of from the workforce to create this company. And I always go back and forth. Sometimes those moments of doubt, like, what do I do? And then you allow yourself to have that moment, yell out, what do I do? Do I quit? And then think about why you shouldn't quit. And I think that's the hardest thing, is if we can quickly, and I've had to learn this, is you got to get your brain back on the positive track, because there's always a nightmare to deal with, whether it's equipment, personnel, another brand coming in, someone undercutting you. There's always something that's going to keep you stressed every moment of the day. And it's, how do you bring yourself back to saying, okay, everyone's dealing with that. We will deal with that. But I had this great success, or I just heard this story. Like, we're here for a reason, and we need to stay on the path for the reason. That's really what, there's a lot of motivation and gratitude from there.
It's not important that you, and I'm talking to the general you, maybe even the listener, there aren't any, Angela, I'm sorry. I think it's stuff. Yeah, my mom listens. There's an important time where, like, you stop being an employee, right? And you gain a little bit of perspective, even if you're your own employee, right? Like, that ceases to exist. And you evolve into this person who's like, oh, the old me would have like crumbled under, just the thought of having to figure out 10 things, never mind the 10,000 things that are, currently on my plate right now. But I see the darkness, and I know that there's light, and we're going to meet in the middle. Right.
Exactly.
And I'm going to have all this fear. There's going to be times when I'm scared, but there's going to be times where I feel like real gratitude in a way that, like, maybe you've never felt it before.
Oh, seriously. And that is something that keeps us going every day, for sure.
That's awesome. I have like 100 more questions, but I feel like this is the most organic place to put a period on this, where we're like talking about the sigh of relief, the love that you can feel from working hard, generating your own, like fulfilling your own dream, and evolving from a person who, had one perspective for 20 plus years into an entirely different person who's then, ultimately used this new perspective to create an entire life with, your partner, Brian. So that's awesome. Right. Angela Brown, if the officers from your DARE program could see you today, they would be so proud of you. I have no doubt. You had a vision, you went out, you made it a reality. There's no better success story than that. Would you please do me the honor, because it is, of telling my guests where they can learn more about you and Coast Cannabis?
Yes, please visit our website. It's www.coastcannabisco.com. Or if you are on social media, please follow us at Coast Canna Co. And you can see in all the stores we're in Mass, and we just launched in Rhode Island.
Woo, the Ocean State, where I grew up. I'm happy to have talked to you. You've been Angela Brown. I've been your host, Will Reed of CannaPlanners. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Common SENSimilla. We will do more, and you will watch, and you will listen, and you will like it. Bye-bye.